Okay. Let's turn to Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9. Then he called his 12 disciples together and gave them power and authority over all devils and to cure diseases. He sent them to preach the kingdom of Yahweh and to heal the sick. He said unto them, Take nothing for your journey, neither staves, nor scrip, neither bread, neither money, neither have 2 coats apiece. And whatsoever house you enter into, there abide, and thence depart. Whosoever will not receive you, when you go out of that city, shake off thy very dust from your feet for a testimony against them. And they departed and went through the towns preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. Now Herod the Tetrarch heard of all that was done by him, and he was perplexed, because that it was said of some that John was risen from the dead, and of some that Elias had appeared, and of others that one of the old prophets had risen again. Herod said, John have I beheaded, but who is this of whom I hear such things? And he desired to see him. And the apostles, when they were returned, told him all that they had done. He took them and went aside privately into a desert place belonging to the city called Bethsaida. And the people, when they knew it, followed him and received them. And he received them and spoke unto them of the kingdom of Yahweh. And he healed them that had need of healing. And when the day began to wear away, then came the 12 and said unto him, Send the multitude away, that they may go into the towns and country round about, and lodge and get victuals, for we are here in a desert place. But he said unto them, Give you them to eat. And they said, We have no more but 5 loaves and 2 fishes, except we should go and buy meat for all this people. For they were about 5,000 men. And he said to his disciples, Make them to sit down by 50s in a company. And they did so, and made them all sit down. Then he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looking up to heaven, he blessed them and broke, and gave to the disciples to set before the multitude. They did eat, and were filled, and there was taken up of fragments that remained to them 12 baskets. And it came to pass, as he was alone praying, his disciples were with him. And he asked them, saying, Whom say the people that I am? They answered and said, John the Baptist. But some say Elias, and others say that one of the old prophets has risen again. He said unto them, But whom say you that I am? And Peter answered and said, The Messiah of Yahweh. And he straitly charged them, and commanded them to tell no man that things, saying, The Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be slain, and be raised the third day. And he said to them all, If any man will come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his stake daily, and follow me. Whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. For what is a man advantage if he gain the whole world and lose himself, or be cast away? For whosoever shall be ashamed of me and of my words, of him shall the Son of Man be ashamed, when he shall come in his own glory and in his Father's and the holy angels. But I tell you the truth, there be some standing here which shall not taste of death till they see the kingdom of Yahweh. And it came to pass about 8 days after these sayings, he took Peter and John and James and went up into the mountain to pray. And as he prayed, the fashion of his countenance was altered, and his raiment was white and glittering. And behold, there talked with him 2 men, which were Moses and Elias, who appeared in glory and spoke of his decease which he should accomplish at Jerusalem. But Peter and they that were with him were heavy with sleep. And when they were awake, they saw his glory and the 2 men that stood with him. And it came to pass, as they departed from him, Peter said unto Yahshua, Master, it is a good thing for us to be here. And let us make the 3 tabernacles, one for thee, and one for Moses, and one for Elias. Not knowing what he said, while he thus spoke, there came a cloud and overshadowed them, and they feared as they entered into the cloud. And there came a voice out of the cloud, saying, This is my beloved Son. Hear him. And when the voice was past, Yahshua was found alone, and they kept it close, and told no man in those days any of those things which they had seen. It came to pass that on the next day, when they were come down from the hill, much people met him. And behold, a man of the company cried out, saying, Master, I beseech thee, look upon my son, for he is my only child. And lo, a spirit takes him, and he suddenly cries out, and it tears him, that he foams again, and bruising him hardly departs from him. And I besought thy disciples to cast him out, and they could not. Yahshua answering and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you and suffer you? Bring thy son here. And as he was yet a-coming, the devil threw him down and tare him. And Yahshua rebuked the unclean spirit, and healed the child, and delivered him again to his father. And they were all amazed at the mighty power of Yahweh. But while they wondered every one at all things which Yahshua did, he said unto his disciples, Let these sayings sink down into your ears, for the Son of Man shall be delivered into the hands of men. But they understood not this saying. And it was hid from them, that they perceived it not, and they feared to ask him of that saying. Then there arose a reasoning among them, which of them should be greatest. Yahshua perceived the thought of their hearts, took a child, and set him by him, and said unto them, Whosoever shall receive this child in my name receives me. Whosoever shall receive me receives him that sent me. For he that is least among you all, the same shall be great. John answered and said, Master, we saw one casting out devils in thy name, and we forbid him, because he followed not with us. And Yahshua said unto him, Forbid him not, for he that is not against us is for us. And it came to pass, when the time was come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem, and sent his messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans, to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. And when his disciples James and John saw this, they said, Master, wilt thou that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elias did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, You know not what manner of spirit you are of. For the Son of Man is not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. And they went to another village. And it came to pass that as they went in the way, a certain man said unto him, Master, I will follow you wheresoever thou goest. Yahshua said unto him, Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has not where to lay his head. And he said unto another, Follow me. But he said, Master, suffer me first to go and bury my father. Yahshua said unto him, Let the dead bury their dead, but go thou and preach the kingdom of Yahweh. Another also said, Master, I will follow you, but let me first go bid them farewell which are at home at my house. Yahshua said unto him, No man, having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of Yahweh. What does the call to follow Yahshua mean to you? Is it something you heard a long time ago and that's now faded away as the years have gone by? Or is it something that you hear afresh every day? Well, today we're going to look at these passages that we just read. in Luke's gospel, where the call to follow Yahshua rings out loud and clear, and we will see a number of different responses to that call. At Luke chapter 9, verse 51, in King James, "And it came to pass when the time was come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem." Yahshua had a clear sense of his purpose. He knew that his time was short and that it wouldn't be long before his work was complete. He also knew that the work would come to its fulfillment in Jerusalem. So we're told he set his face to go to Jerusalem. The New International Version puts it this way: he resolutely set out for Jerusalem. There's an intentionality that's expressed quite strongly. He's going to Jerusalem to fulfill Yahweh's plan for him and for humanity. There is a danger of rejection. And as he starts off, he approaches a Samaritan village, and so he sends messengers ahead to prepare for a way for him. No doubt, they tell the people that Yahshua is planning to stay there on his way to Jerusalem. Now, if you know anything about the relationship between the Jews and the Samaritans at this point in history, you will realize that this was a very gracious thing that Yahshua did. You see, what he was doing was including the Samaritans in his mission. He might as well have bypassed them, but no. He sets out to stay with them, to include them in the fulfillment of Yahweh's plan, his plan of salvation. But what is their response? They reject him. They don't want to be part of anyone who's set their face to go to Jerusalem. So here we see the first type of response to Yahshua's call to follow him, to join him on the way to the stake. One response of the people to the call of Yahshua's is rejection. But not only do we see that, but we also see the danger of rejection. The danger of rejection isn't that what James and John wanted, the sons of thunder had in mind. It isn't that Yahweh will strike us down on the spot. It's more subtle than that. Nevertheless, it's just as daunting. The danger of rejection is that Yahshua will let us have our way. He never forces us to accept him. He just goes on to another village. In other words, if you choose to ignore the call of Yahshua, he will let you. That's a bit scary, isn't it? It's a bit like a child who throws a tantrum. Some parents have learned that the best way to deal with a tantrum is to walk out of the room. Why? Because when the child realizes their bluff has been called, they stop screaming. The aim of the tantrum is to get the parent to try harder to please the child. But if the child is left to scream without an audience, they soon give up. Well, it's a bit more serious when it comes to Yahshua's call. Those who reject Yahshua find themselves like the child, left alone. But what a terrible thing it must be to find yourself ignored by the living Elohim, left to your own devices, without Yahweh to call on when you find yourself in trouble. But that's what happens here. We're told that they went to another village. So Yahshua moves on, and he's walking down the road. Someone comes up to him and says, "I will follow you wherever you go." Here's someone who's recognized Yahshua as a great leader and who wants to follow him. But the only trouble is he hasn't really thought about what following Yahshua entails. His is almost a flippant comment, a superficial desire to be on the excitement of Yahshua's mission, without first considering the cost of commitment. He wants deep commitment based on a clear understanding of what following him entails. He says, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Elsewhere, he tells his followers that to follow him entails taking up their stake. That is, being ready to die for Yahshua. The call to follow Yahshua isn't an easy thing. It involves being at odds with the world, and you will be at odds. Possibly at the cost of your own lives. We are sheltered right now as Americans, but you go over to the European nations and you find that if you're a Christian, you will reap the fact that you're a Christian. Possibly even lose your head. But just because Yahshua rebukes this man doesn't mean he doesn't want people to follow him. Because he then turns to another man and says, follow me. This man understands what Yahshua is asking, but he asks that he first be allowed to go and bury his father. That is, he's asking if he can leave the decision for later, when his father's dead and he no longer has that family responsibility. But Yahshua says, no, this is a call that takes first priority. The priority of commitment to Yahshua overrides even the priority to caring for your father. How many people are there who use their responsibility to their family as an excuse for not serving Yahweh with all of their heart and soul and strength? How many people are there who use family responsibility as an excuse for not worshiping regularly with Yahweh's people? As an excuse for remaining fringe members of a congregation rather than an active core member? But Yahshua says, let the dead bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of Yahweh. The priority of commitment to Yahshua comes about not just because Yahshua is master of all, though that's a good start. It also comes about because people are dying. When he talks about the dead burying the dead, he's saying those who haven't heard the gospel are as good as dead. They need the gospel to bring them back to life. What's the point of caring for your father? In the end, he suffers eternal death. A much better way to care for him is to proclaim the kingdom of Yahweh to him. Tell him of Yeshua's offer for forgiveness and new life. The same applies to our next door neighbors, our brothers and sisters, our nieces and nephews and cousins, sons and daughters. Telling them the good news of Yahshua is by far the best way to care for them. Finally, another person comes up to Yahshua and says, I'll follow you, but let me first say farewell to those at my home. Sounds like a reasonable request, doesn't it? I'm ready to sign up, but first let me say my farewells. To this person, Yahshua gives what seems to be the harshest response yet. He says, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of Yahweh. He seems to be saying, this call is so urgent that you don't even have time to explain to your nearest and dearest where you are going. But it's even more serious than that. I think what he's saying is that this call is a call to lifelong commitment. It's a call that can't be put off, and it's a call that once taken up must not be put down. It's no use deciding to follow Yahshua and then reverting every now and then to your old lifestyle. It's no use committing your life to Yahshua and a few years later deciding you've done enough and someone else can take over. You see, as I look around here, most of us are retired. Retired from paid employment, that is. But you haven't retired from life. In fact, most people I know who are retired are busier now than they were when they were working. It seems that way anyways. But the question is, are you busy doing Yahweh's work? Are you still committed to following Yahshua along the way of the stake? As far as I can see it, there's no biblical precedent for retiring from the ministry. We can all continue to minister for Yahshua until our dying breath. Yeshua's call to go and proclaim the kingdom of Yahweh continues to apply to us throughout our lives. And the imperative just gets greater the older you get. Because let's face it, time left for us is getting shorter. It's said that the older people are, the harder it is to win them to be believers. Yet they need to find Messiah just as much as those who are young. And who are the people they are going to most likely to hear about Yahshua from? It's those in their own age group with whom they mix. So the imperative to proclaim the kingdom of Yahweh never stops being relevant. The call to be single-minded as a servant of Yahweh never ceases. Yeshua's words maintain their relevance throughout our lives. No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of Yahweh. So how are you responding to Yeshua's call at this point in your life? You might be one who is rejecting his call to commitment, one who is just going through the motions of church membership. If that's the case, then heed the warning of this passage. If you reject Yahshua, he might just let you have your way. Are you one who hasn't really thought through the cost of commitment? If you are, then be aware that commitment to Yahshua entails committing all you are and all you have to his service. Have you taken on board the priority of Yeshua's call over all the others in your life? All of your time and energy? Have you made Yeshua's call the first priority? And finally, have you committed yourself to Yahshua for life? Are you prepared to continue as his servant until your dying breath? The rewards for service to Yahshua are great. The rewards to service to Yahshua are great. But the demands of that service are equally stringent. So be one who is totally and permanently committed to serving Yahshua and proclaiming the kingdom of Yahweh to those around you. If you don't do it, no one else will. Yahweh bless.